So we are going to talk about sustaining your efforts over time. And we have two speakers with us today, Dr. Frank Hamilton and Kerry Bartoletti. Frank is an associate professor of management at Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, Florida. He is a retired Army officer with 22 years of service. After retiring, Frank started and managed a professional employer organization. He's the co-founder and president of Animal Coalition of Tampa, ACT, a high-quality, high-volume, low-cost nonprofit veterinary clinic that serves more than 25,000 clients a year. He also is the director of Spay Florida, a referral program for spay-neuter assistance in Florida, part of the United Spay Alliance. Frank has served on several boards, the Brandon, Florida Chamber of Commerce and the Hillsborough County Animal Advisory Board. His work has appeared in Human Relations, Business Ethics, a European Review, Academy of Management Review, Journal of Urban Affairs, Leadership, the Key Concepts, the Journal of Market-Focused Management, and the Journal of Ethics and Leadership, Anthrozoös, and Frontiers of Veterinary Science. His PhD is in Business Administration from the University of South Florida. Kerry Bartoletti is the Program Coordinator for Protectors of Animals, POA, in East Hartford, Connecticut. The duties for this position include grant writing, donor management, serving as advisor to the POA Spay Neuter Clinic, and Spay Connecticut Program Coordination. In addition, she's the co-founder of Friends of Feral Cheshire Cats, a TNR organization in Central Connecticut. Kerry's previous animal welfare experience spanning the last 30 years includes Spay Neuter Clinic Management at POA Spay and Hope Spay Neuter Clinic, as well as serving on the board of directors of Mid-Hudson Animal Aid in Beacon, New York. Kerry was also one of the founding board members of Connecticut Votes for Animals. Kerry left the corporate world in 2002 after 20 years as a technical writer with IBM, Pitney Bowes, and startup software companies. And so I believe we have Kerry speaking with us first.
Thank you for the introduction. As Stacy mentioned, I am with POA, and Spay Connecticut is a program of POA. I'm going to talk today about finding money to subsidize those spay-neuter surgeries. So grants from the larger funders are harder to get. That's because there's been a lot of competition and also some shift of focus of what those grants will support. So where can you get those spay-neuter subsidy funds? Because we all know how important it is to subsidize spay-neuter. In Connecticut, there are areas closer to New York where the income is much higher, but we do have urban areas and rural areas where that spay-neuter subsidy money is really needed. We also have a really high feral cat population and a cat population in general in Connecticut. So in Connecticut, the Department of Agriculture does issue low-income and feral cat vouchers. Those are indirect funds that help, and Frank is going to talk a little bit more about the state funding a little bit later. But we're getting our money from Spay Connecticut from local and community foundations, but the majority of our funding is coming from private donors. So I want to talk about a couple of things that you need to do if you're starting out prior to seeking donations. One, you should have a 501c3. Two, you need to know your fundraising regulations for your state. And three, you need some sort of donor database to track those donations. So the importance of a 501c3, you can be a part of another organization. Spay Connecticut is part of Protectors of Animals or a standalone program, but either way, donors want that tax deductible acknowledgement. Tax laws have changed, but people do want that tax deductible acknowledgement, especially if they're itemizing their donations. There's other benefits too. You're exempt from federal, state, and local tax. You have possible exemption in your state from sales tax. And funders want to only allow 501c3s to apply for grants. And also, having your 501c3 does lend legitimacy to your organization, and also it adds legitimacy to your ask to your donors. So it's important to know the fundraising laws in your state and other states where you plan to actively solicit those donations. And by soliciting, I'm talking about person-to-person asks, sending out email appeals and appeal letters. There's 40 states plus Washington, D.C. that do require registration to actively solicit for charitable donations. So Connecticut is close to Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New York, and we were finding that our donor database from Massachusetts was growing, and that could be from adoptions, but also people utilizing our spay-neuter clinic. So we researched what it would take to register in Massachusetts, and we are in the process of doing that so that we can actively send appeal letters and email appeals to Massachusetts donors. Down at the bottom, you see a link, and that is a link where you can find out more information about what your state does require when you're going to be soliciting donations. And lastly, it's really important to have some sort of donor tracking database. And that could be something as simple as a spreadsheet or something more complex like a donor management software. And it's going to allow you to track past, current, and prospective donors. We are currently using Network for Good for POA. It's also allows us to efficiently generate appeal letters by email or by snail mail. It's also a quick and efficient way to generate our acknowledgments for donations, and it also allows us to segment our donors by what interests them. And I can also go on there and generate a report to see who hasn't donated recently, and also we can segment donors by interest. Little Green Light was something that's a little more affordable that I've used for Friends of Feral Cheshire Cats, but it does some of the basic same things. But the really important point is you just need a way to track who is identifying with your mission and who's supporting you, and to be able to acknowledge them quickly. So networking is really important when you're looking for new sources for donors. It allows you to build relationships and expand your circle to spread your message. One of those ways is Chamber of Commerce. They offer discounts to most nonprofits to join, and recently for Friends of Feral Cheshire Cats, my TNR group, we had a supporter who sponsored a year membership for us, and that allows us to meet business leaders or businesses in our community to spread our message. It's also important to get to know your local officials where you're operating. We are in East Hartford, Connecticut, and Spay Connecticut was the recipient of the mayor's charity ball about 2 years ago, which did generate a significant donation, and we were to be the recipient again last year, but unfortunately because of COVID-19 that was postponed. If your state has an animal welfare legislative organization, you might want to consider joining that. It's a great way to meet like-minded people, keep abreast of what's going on in your state as far as laws for spay-neuter, laws that are either friendly to your mission or laws that are not friendly to your mission, so that you can get involved with that. And I do have down make friends with your local Walmart, but that also means other local stores in your area. The reason why I say Walmart is pre-COVID, I attended a neighborhood Christmas party, and my new neighbor manages a Walmart. They have funds at their discretion that they want to use in the community, and she told me that herself and some other managers were finding that people weren't applying for that funding. So that was something that I wanted to take advantage of right away. So community foundations are a great way to apply for grants. Spay Connecticut has had success with funding for subsidized surgeries. For some community foundations, you may only be able to apply by invitation, but most are not by invitation. And when we're doing a proposal, we focus on how our proposal is going to help community members who need assistance with their pets. Recently in one town, we were awarded $2,500 for one town to subsidize spay-neuter for dogs. And again, you want to target your proposal when you're working with a community foundation by a county, town, or zip code, because that's where they're focusing their money. And you want to stress how you're partnering with other local organizations like animal control officers, food banks, and social agencies, because they're in touch with the people that need your help the most. Down at the bottom, I do have a link where you can go to find your community foundations in your area. I do subscribe to their newsletters, and I check out their websites so I can be aware of their grant cycles and also any webinars that they might be having. Local private foundations have also been another great source of funding for us. So you can search for local private foundations and read their 990s, their tax documents, to see if they've supported animal causes in the past. You can do that on candid.org or just search for foundations online. And I use GuideStar to look up those 990s to see what they're funding, and also if they accept unsolicited proposals. In other words, you don't have to be invited to apply. Then I go over to their website, I look at their guidelines for submitting a grant proposal, what their grant cycles currently are, and I do keep a spreadsheet of all of these foundations so I know what's coming up. There is a foundation that has supported spay-neuter efforts for POA in the past, and that funder actually calls me before their grant cycle opens now and tells me that she's got X amount of money, and she calls me before the grant cycle even opens so I can be prepared. So it's about building relationships with these local organizations. But as I mentioned earlier, most of our subsidy money for spay-neuter does come from private donors. People do want to help, they just need to be asked. And it's all about relationships and building those relationships and your message about what you're doing. So where can you find some of these donors? Well, people give because they're connected to your mission. So you want to start with people you know, and those could be people that board members have connections with, your family and your friends. As Anne mentioned earlier, that's who she goes to for volunteering. They want to know how they can help, and you can spread your message. You might have professional connections or people that you serve with on other committees. You can offer to speak at their organization's meetings and just get that message out there. And then you also want to look at the people who already know you and care about your mission, such as your volunteers or your current supporters. You can look at people who have attended an event in the past but haven't yet donated, and that's where your donor tracking is going to come in to help you do that. Also, you might have vendors that you work with, or people that are on your mailing list that haven't given in a while, reaching out to them specifically to try to re-engage them. And also social media. Facebook has been successful, very successful for us. But we've just formed a committee, a social media committee, to look at ways and other social media outlets to engage a younger, different audience, or to engage new donors. Generally, our donor demographic tends to be older, and we do know we have to get the younger generation involved. So cultivating donors sounds like a daunting task, and it can be, and it does take work, but you can do it. And it may not happen overnight, but you do need to have a strong message, and there's lots of resources to help you do that, and I'll show some of them at the end of the presentation. And what you want to do is show how spay-neuter works for the animals, their owners, and your community, how it all works together. And you want to have data to support that. And you want to make it about your donor. It's about the donor experience and not about you. So this is how to engage your donor to really get involved with the mission, because as I said, they do really want to help. Keep on learning. I use lots of resources for examples on how to do things. And I have to say, when Spay Connecticut first started, I got so much information from other state leaders, from United Spay Alliance conferences, things that I use all the time and that I keep going back to. And use your donor tracking always to see who's responded to an online campaign or a mailing campaign and reach out. Some of the ideas for generating funds. Talk to a few donors who have already supported your spay-neuter efforts about doing a matching donation campaign. My TNR group started about 15 years ago, and a donor put up $5,000 as a matching donation campaign, and she now does $15,000 for a period of mid-October till Christmas Day. And we've been able to match that every year and know that we have that money going into our spay-neuter season, which is not a season anymore, it's year-round. Facebook, you can do a lot of things. You can do a Facebook $5 Friday and other Facebook campaigns, but be specific about what you're asking for. This amount of money will spay a cat. This amount of money will spay a dog. Donor databases, I just want to mention, do come in handy if you're using something like Network for Good when you're doing a Facebook campaign. When you don't use a donor database to do that, when you donate via a Facebook campaign, a lot of times the donor information does not transfer back to you. In other words, you get the check, but a lot of times it says anonymous, and you can't trace who donated that information. So I use Network for Good to generate a link to put in my Facebook post that drives the donor directly to our donor database, so we can capture that donor's information, and then they stay in our database and we can reach out on other campaigns. You can ask clinic clients to help pay it forward. That worked a little bit better before COVID-19 because they were coming into our facility to drop off and pick up their animals. But you can include something in your email. We're all contactless now since COVID-19 with our intake and discharge paperwork, but you can find ways to ask them to pay it forward. Have a means to accept those online donations. It's really important, whether it's PayPal or some kind of link through your donor management software. And there's some post-COVID ideas that worked well prior to COVID. Face-to-face at local events. POA does a lot of local events at fairs and festivals, and it's a great way to meet new donors and also get information out about the services that you're offering, so the people that need it can get that. We've invited donors to visit our clinic, and I hope we can do that again in the future. And also, when you have a bigger event, there's something we did successfully called the Ask. So last February 29th, right before COVID-19, we were very fortunate to get our major fundraiser in. And during that, we did something called the Ask. Attendees received a paddle when they came in. We had an MC who is a local radio personality that's very involved and very well known for her efforts to help the rescue community. And it started out small, asking who here wants to sponsor a spay for a cat, or who here wants to sponsor a spay or neuter for a dog. And we did have one donor who stood up and sponsored $10,000, donated $10,000 on the spot. Now, that's not something that happens all the time, but it's something that you can certainly utilize even on an online event, which some people are moving to. You want to make sure you have bequest information for your donors, and you can have that on your website or create materials to send out. And also, a lot of companies do offer employer matching programs for employees when they donate, and that has been successful also. So I just want to take a few minutes to talk about a tale of one donor, and this spans 15 years. It starts from the start of Friends of Feral Cheshire Cats and evolves into Spay Connecticut. So when Friends of Feral Cheshire Cats started, we held a tag sale, and someone came by because she had seen an article about us in the paper, and she was really in tune with the spay neuter mission, and she donated $1,000. Well, we were very excited. So when we had a cat a few weeks later that was up for adoption, we named her after the donor, and it was in the local newspaper, and it was also on the community access channel. And we received a donation for $2,500 shortly after that, with a note that said, if you ever need me, call me. And just getting started doing this, I was very shy about calling, but I did make that call. And it started a relationship over 15 years. This person, when Spay Connecticut started, was really looking to make serious donations into the spay neuter mission, but there were other organizations in Connecticut that she was more familiar with and wanted to know why we were going to do it better. And I spent a lot of time with her, and this donor has now become the largest private donor for our Spay Connecticut spay neuter subsidy efforts. So again, it's about building those relationships. So I've got some resources here. There's so many out there, but in particular, some of the ones that I go to. Sandy Rees has a book, 10K Fundraising for Animal Rescue, How to Raise Your First or Your Next $10,000. It's full of information about fundraising plans and letters for appeals and thank you letters and how to really focus on building your donor database. But I also sign up for lots of free newsletters and blogs. Network for Good has great information. You do not have to be a client. and purchase their product to sign up and get that information, and lots of free webinars. Get Fully Funded, that's Sandy Rees. She also has a lot of great free information. If you can, she's got a great fundraising conference that I did online this year. I also go to the nonprofitmarketing.com blog. There's great information about different email topics, newsletter topics, and clarification.com. But again, there's so much information out there to sign up and get for free. And I just want to close by saying you want to thank your donors again, and do it promptly. When I first started doing this, someone said to me, bank, then bank, and that's so true. You want to make sure that you can promptly thank your donors. A lot of us have a lot of things going on, but this is so important to keep that relationship strong. And you want to thank by saying things like, "You're our hero," or "Here's what you've done," because it is about their donor experience, because they have done something awesome. And I also want to say thank you to everybody today and turn it over to Frank.
Thank you, Kerry, for setting me up very nicely. Before I start, I also want to thank Sherry Storm for two things. First of all, she mentioned Peter Marsh, and those of you who have not read Peter Marsh's books, please read them. A long time ago, I got my start in this business by reading Peter Marsh and understanding what he was saying. Also, I didn't know Indiana had a public program, so I just added $700,000 to my total, which is always good. So what we're going to talk about today is really a couple of things. We're going to talk about sustainability over time, and that's really the issue. The last several speakers have talked about, well, we've been in business since 2005 or 1996 or whatever the case may be, and I think that becomes very important. Esther mentioned last night that hey, we haven't had one of these kind of conferences in over 10 years. I remember that last conference, and based on what I've seen today, we've come a long way. And I think that's great. There's a lot more effort going on out there, a lot more animals being touched, and I think that's wonderful. So I want to, first of all, talk about at the basic level, sustainability is about how you are maintaining yourself for 3 to 5 years as an organization or as individuals. And we've got to start to begin to think that, because a lot of grants and certainly not any public money is going to go to how the organization supports itself. And I've really got two kinds of sustainability I want to talk about. First of all, economic sustainability, dollars in, dollars out. How much does it cost to run your operation? Yeah, I'm a professor of management and I do talk money, but debits equal credit. So, are we economically sustainable over time? And if so, how are we doing that? And second of all, what about the personnel sustainability? The recent studies say that a volunteer is only going to last for about a year. And then they burn out. Now, you might be very fortunate and have longtime volunteers. We had longtime volunteers when we were schlepping around, as was mentioned earlier. We have volunteers that stay with us for 13 years, which I think is tremendous. And like I say, the research says that's not going to happen much. So how are you maintaining your personnel? How are you keeping them? Because if you want a consistent service over time, we have to figure out how we're going to do that. And that becomes important. But this is at the basic level. This is just keeping the operation, the electric lights running, paying the insurance, whatever the case may be. The second thing is subsidies for more spay neuter. I've spent the last 4 months looking at publicly funded programs, and publicly funded programs are funded by tax dollars in some sort or the other. And it could be at the state level, and so far today we've talked about state level. I'm going to talk about at county level also, or at local government funding, because at the end of the day, we have to remember that when you look at the law, animals are under the government. In the state of Florida, animal control is a county function. and different states do it different ways. So, you know, what government level handles animal control? Because they're the ones that are spending tax dollars. So currently, and thanks to Sherry, it's now 23 states have a statewide publicly funded program. There are 5 methods of funding. License plates are by far the most popular with 14 states out of the 22. Pet food fees are a new fast riser. There are 3 states that have been doing it for a while, and 1, New Mexico, just started. There will be a panel on pet food fees tomorrow, and so, you know, I advertise, please stay tuned, because I told Esther when I started all this, I was a little, I was not convinced that pet food fees would work, but I've changed my mind. We've put in a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests for the last couple of months, and I will show you some numbers. Tax write-offs on a state income tax form is another way. Dog license differentials, or differentials between intact animals and neutered animals. And finally, asking for donations. So we've got all these different ways that the government can get some funds. So the total revenue, I show 8.7 million. I need to add another 700,000 to that from Indiana. So really at 9.4 million a year, with 4 out of 23 states not reporting. So this is probably the largest single place that you can get funding. There's lots of it. Unfortunately, we're talking about tax dollars. So the numbers of spay neuters are not tracked in a number of states. In the state of Florida, they track the money. They don't track the number of spay neuters. You have to actually physically go through all grant requests and add up the numbers, which we have done. So then a question you wanted to ask is, are the spay neuters targeted? And what I mean by targeted is, are we looking at the animals that are most in need? Community cats is a big one. Pit bulls and pit bull mixes. If you're in Florida, also what is known as the ubiquitous Florida brown dog. But the poor are also an area of concern, and they probably have the largest amount of intact animals of any population. So how are we getting to them? And there recently was recently published in 2020, a book called Underdogs, Pets, People in Poverty by R. Luke and Rowan, who both were with the Tufts Center for Animals and Public Policy. And they really dig into, you know, providing veterinary support to poor people. And I read this book and I'm going, these guys must have been paying attention to what our clinic was doing, because we were dealing with a lot of people that were poor, and we also had a taxpayer program that focused on the poor. So they were in and out a lot. And there's some very unique things about dealing with poor people that we have to pay attention to. And I think that our Luke and Rowan did a great job in their book, and it kind of described what my staff had to worry about every day. So let's talk about Florida. And again, Sherry talked about Indiana earlier. Let's talk about Florida. Yeah, we have a nice looking plate. It's changed over the year. Florida has 105 plates currently, honoring different things, universities, teams, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Florida Animal Friend plate is in the top 20 of being the most popular, and last year raised $568,000 for money. So each spring, municipal and nonprofit agencies are encouraged to submit funding proposals for spay-neuter projects in the state. Each grant is then assessed by a 4-member grant review committee and scored for the following strengths. Are you targeting important animal populations? Can you increase surgery numbers above the existing baseline of whatever you're doing? Is there a cost to benefit ratio? And a couple of speakers have talked about that today. And when you're figuring the county or state government, whoever is handling animal control, they're paying for every animal going in the front door, and it's tax dollars. And can you stop animals from going in the front door of the animal shelter? So what's the track record of the applicant? And again, as Kerry pointed out, do you have a current 990? If you're a larger organization, do you have your audit? All of those questions are being asked, and they'll ask for that kind of paperwork. And finally, can you sustain the effort? If a virtual rescue group applies for $25,000, which is the max you can get in this, they have to have the signature of the supporting veterinarian or the veterinary establishment to say, yeah, okay, we're going to support this for however many surgeries. So, can you sustain this effort? They don't want to give away money and then either not get it back or not get the number of animals. So all of that has to be in consideration. And most states have some form of being able to do this. Now, the interesting thing is that the Florida plate started in 2007. In 2003, Hillsborough County, which is where our clinic is operating, did a low-cost spay-neuter voucher program. And it was based on New Hampshire and New Jersey. Hillsborough County currently has a population of 1.4 million, which makes it larger than 8 states. And the county government has a budget of a little over $3 billion. So it's a big thing. And so it was first funded by tag license differential because we had a differential. However, as we moved along, we actually had Peter Marsh talk to our county commission, and he did the math and said, you need to do 7,500 surgeries a year. And we got funding for it above and beyond the tag differential, and we still have that funding. Because what the cost for the animal services at the time, and this is a 1996 number, it was costing them to catch, house, and dispose $168 per animal. County-funded spay-neuter program was $65 an animal, and that's dogs and cats. And there was a study back in 2003 that said for every targeted surgery you do, you're stopping somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 animal from entering the system. So that's an issue. And that's how you sell a government. And you've got to be able to sell a government. You're going to save them money because they're interested in that. However, and this is the current problem we have in Hillsborough County, is if it's not marketed and that marketed to the poor, the targeted market, it won't happen because they're a little different. They don't get their news the way we normally do. And what we found was we had to have actually word of mouth marketing, which then upped the game at the clinic itself, at the clinics, because there were more than one clinic that were providing those services. Because if the customer service was not superb, then that whoever the poor person was, when they went out, they'd just say, well, you don't care for they didn't care for my animal. They were very cold. And so then they would talk to their friends and nobody would come. So you've got to market, and it's got to be a focus market, and it's got to be based on customer service, because there is a trust issue between the poor and anyone who appears to be an authority figure. Now, the way this was handled was we didn't have to verify their income. There are federal programs out there that already do that. Section 8 housing, Medicaid, TANF, supplementary security for women, infants, and children, supplemental nutritional assistance programs, SNAP, food stamps just in general. So, that they're already card carrying. Some other government agency has already approved it. So they've got to go through and be able to you've got to be able to do that. And this makes it easy. And again, this is something that Peter Marsh set up in New Hampshire many, many moons ago. But he, exported it, which was very nice. So some challenges. As I already pointed out, we're talking about over $9 million a year. That's not chicken feed. So lots of money available, and it's government-backed policy or law. So you're not so much at the discretion of a donor or two donors. The limitations, like other forms of subsidies, this must be managed. Kerry just went through all the work that she put in to keep those donors going. You got to pay attention with this also. You can't walk away from it because governments are very fickle. This has to be managed. Tax dollars can go away. Change of administration, change of individuals. These are all things that can happen, which can cause us all kinds of interesting challenges. So I think when Helga talks tomorrow, she's going to talk about pet fees and what she had to go through to get them approved. It is work to work with the government. Most of us don't understand the government. We just know that they take money from us in taxes. Well, they also spend our tax dollars on other things. So we've got to figure it out. Now, a couple of things that I have seen as I've been hunting on this is a shout out to Spay, Georgia. Georgia has a license plate, and it brought in $711,000 last year, which is a little over 15,000 surgeries, which I think is wonderful. Think about that, 15,000 surgeries, a better reach than a lot of organizations. But on top of that, Spay Georgia went out and fundraised enough money to fund another almost 4,000 surgeries. So that's 19,000 surgeries in the state of Georgia, which is great. Spay Tennessee developed a program which was much more aimed at private funding than public funding, because they do have a license plate in Tennessee, but the funding is kind of hinky, as it's been explained to me. But what Spay Tennessee has managed to do is work with local groups and get local groups to apply for funds, so you spread your reach, which I think is a great idea. Something that I would love to do in Spay Florida if we had a few more people. But my hat's off to Julie for doing that. So, as we look at this, we go, okay, there's lots of ways we can fund, and most of us probably fund several ways. Donations, tax dollars, both work. Now, Kerry mentioned two things that I just want to touch on. She mentioned Walmart funding. Do you know, it was really nice to have a Walmart right down the street for me, because that's $1,000 if you apply. It's great. And so, what can I do with $1,000? Well, I can think of a lot of things, like make sure that I can pay for my employees. Also, community foundations. We were very fortunate at Animal Coalition that the community foundations were just starting when we started. And so, again, down there talking to them, managing it. This is a full-time job, and this is the backside or below the line process that, I'm not necessarily touching the dogs and cats. I don't get in to talk to the docs a whole bunch. I wish I could. I enjoy that. It's great fun. It's challenging. It's hard work, and my hat's off to all of you. But my function in life is making sure that the doors are open, the lights are running, and we have the equipment. And how do I do that? I do it through fundraising, and I do it through tax dollars. Anyways, again, as I say, here's your questions. Certainly produces more funding than any other source, the tax dollars. Must be consistently managed. Are we targeting those most in need? And don't ever forget, animal control is a government function. They may have given it to an SPCA or a humane society or other organization, but it's tax dollars paying for it somehow. This ties the government to the solution, and we can't forget that. And I'd like to thank all of you for the time. Are there any questions? And Kerry is still here. I'm still here. If you have questions, we will be here for answering. Thank you very much for the time.
So, have you adjusted your eligibility verification due to COVID? Many families that may qualify as low income may be in the approval process for federal assistance for an extended period of time due to COVID delays. So how have you handled any, or have you learned about handling any COVID delays about that?
Well, it's a very interesting question. What has happened is food stamps have just gone out the window. I mean, as far as how many people are now becoming eligible, and we're still, working away at all of that. So I know that there's been some issues. Unfortunately, in the county program, the county took away the ability to look at income tax forms and said, okay, we're only going to rely on the programs. So that's kind of put us in a bit of a problem. But I can't really answer the question because it's not come up as a major challenge.
How many states did you say had the tax check, the tax checkoff? Did you have a list of the numbers on that, Frank?
Tax write-off. There is a chart. I'm glad you reminded me of that. There is a 6-page chart with every state, and what we have managed to find out so far. So for those of you that are interested, it's at the last link, and look at it. And if I've made a mistake, let me know. I will update the chart. But tax write-off, I'm sitting here looking 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I didn't count that one.
Okay.
Five.
Five.
Okay.
Five. So the license plate wins out.
License plate is 13 out of 23 states, 14 out of 23 states. Yes, it's the number one. I think that pet food will soon overtake that, or potentially overtake that, but I don't know. I think Esther hopes that.
Are there good estimates of the cost of per animal services for shelter intake, or do we need to calculate that at the local level?
It's an interesting question. Peter Marsh and I've talked about it a lot. It almost has to be calculated at the local level. Washington, D.C. recently being about 7 or 8 months ago, calculated their annual cost, and it's over $400 an animal. So obviously, if you're in rural Indiana, it's not going to necessarily be $400 an animal. So you really need local numbers. And the number that I used for our county was on the budget submission for the county animal control budget. So it was their number. They couldn't argue with it.
And when you were doing your research for this, Frank, did you look at any of the communities that are just getting municipal funding, direct municipal funding for spay neuter, New York City, LA, Chicago, Houston, any of those?
I didn't look at any of the big cities because it is kind of unique to a huge major metropolitan area. And that's why I threw the countywide program in there, because that can be done almost anywhere as long as they have an animal control. And I know, for example, in Tennessee, out of the 97 counties, roughly a third of them have no animal control. So it's a problem, but they don't have a New York or an LA either.
I have a question for Kerry. When you were talking about how Facebook and Network for Good connect with one another so that you do get those names, because I've definitely seen the Facebook reports with like nothing there.
Nothing there, yes.
And so I won't dive deep on that one, but the other topic that comes up is Amazon. When people order off the Amazon wish list, we sometimes don't get a sense of who's donated those products either. Do you have any special magic with regards to Amazon?
Nothing special with Amazon yet. Sometimes there'll be a little slip of paper in the bottom of the box and it might get thrown out, so you don't see that. or you can, there's a little code there that you can go look up, but no, I haven't found a way to really identify those people, because that's been very successful for POA as an organization, especially around the holidays, with people sending things off of the wish list, and you don't know who to thank, and you don't know how to add them to your donor database.
I've got a couple of little bits of information here from Julie. ASPCA did a study a few years ago. Average cost to catch, house, and euthanize was $279 per animal. And she's also saying in Tennessee, over half of Tennessee, I would say she's saying either towns or counties have no shelters or animal control. Counties, she's saying. Thank you, Julie, for clarifying so quickly there. So that's a little pass-through information from Julie on that. Another little random factoid for everybody to know, you would mention, Kerry, about Chamber of Commerce and getting involved with them and stuff. So the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, when we started back in 1992 in Newburyport, our first phone number was the Chamber of Commerce, because they let us use their phone number, because the executive director was one of the founders of the organization. So of course they had an office cat too, but they also offered their phone number for us before we had anything, you know. We had a PO box and needed a phone number, and they said use our phone number for the first 2 years. So you can get a lot of help. And there's SCORE also, if you're just starting up and you need business advice. SCORE, I've worked with some of their consultant people over the years, and they've been helpful to just help with strategy. I think mentoring is really important for anybody who is in a leadership role, whether that it's a volunteer board president or in a paid capacity as an executive director. But most of us are either small organizations or adolescent organizations where we are always emotionally conflicted about who we should be and what we should be doing and what's our role and all that kind of stuff, because the lines get blurry very easily, because when a situation hits us, we all want to react and respond and that kind of thing. So I think anyway, I digress there, but I think that the local chamber has a lot of beneficial resources. You've talked about community foundations a lot too. And I think that's a great, as well as the local banks and their charitable foundations.
And they're not the only ones that have charitable foundations. There are other organizations that have a charitable arm that you can reach out and ask for help. And it depends a lot on the local area, what's available, way beyond PetSmart and Petco charitable foundations.
Kerry, you were going to add something, or did I?
I was just going to say that the Chamber of Commerce, I was surprised at how welcoming they were to have us, and it's just a great way to get to know members of your community. And they put us right out there on their Facebook page, and so it's a great resource.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in terms of other funding sources that I've sort of chewed through is I have had Lions Club sponsor like a day on our Catmobile, and so like if it's like the Lions Club of Lynn, Massachusetts, and so then you park and you just do a Lynn day, and it's for the residents of Lynn, and you do a surgery, so geo-targeted, specific to that bank or that civic organization, a women's club or something like that. I mean, they're always wanting to help out with a local, and it's like individual stewardship. I mean, I look at them more like leadership donors and try and form that relationship with the phone calls, the board members making the phone calls and that kind of thing. You referenced Little Green Light, I think, Kerry, right?
Yeah.
And how do you think that is for donor management software?
I think for a smaller organization, it's not as robust as some of the other ones, but for my TNR group, it worked okay. It's a little more labor intensive, I found. Network for Good is kind of like Bloomerang. I forget who was mentioning Bloomerang earlier, but it's very customizable. You can change your letters all the time to be specific to a particular donor. You can change your campaigns all the time. So if you can afford something like that, and the fee is based on the number of donors in your database, but Little Green Light, just if you're smaller and just starting out, it's a great way to keep track of donors and also to generate your acknowledgments.
Great.
Mhm.
Let me just look here. Frank mentioned that working with low-income communities is complicated. Issues of transportation, working hours, time, and more are barriers on top of trust. Are there good examples of providing logistics on top of direct spay-neuter surgeries at the shelter level using public and/or private funds?
Um, the best example that I can use, and again, it comes from Humane Alliance, is the transportation model. You can transport not only for spay neuters, but you can also transport for wellness. So that you can use the funds that way. Uh, Getting people to the clinic seems to be the hardest issue. One of the things that we found in Hillsborough County is you couldn't bring an animal on a bus. So right off the bat, you got a problem. So that's why we started doing transport, uh, not only for the spay neuters, but for other things. And so you're thinking about if you're using uh, donor funds are easier to use than government funds, because government funds normally come with a tag. In other words, for your spay neuters, if you're going to have to build in transportation somehow into that surgery cost when you apply for the state money, and the county money, nah, not happening at all. So that's where you then have to reach out to a private donor and say, okay, I need this in order to provide this service. And you've got a 50-50 shot, but you don't have a shot until you ask. So that's the ask.
Right. And one thing to think about getting comfortable with the ask is people sometimes use the thought of, okay, I have to get through 10 no's to get to one yes. And so when you ask somebody for a donation and they say no, you thank them for the donation. And in some cases, some people even like write thank you letters for the no, because it means they're getting that much closer to the yes. And
I was
so,
I was going to say, Stacy, the sales school I went to said 21 no's for yes. So
I guess I'm the optimist, I guess.
okay.
Do you have an idea on what is the most common category helped through publicly funded spay neuter programs? Is it private shelter animals, municipal shelter animals, ferals, or animals owned by low income residents? Zip code targeting or breed targeting? What are the key categories?
It depends on where you are. In the state of Florida, it becomes poor people, it becomes community cats, it becomes pit bulls. Those kind of seem to be the thing. Then once you start going to PetSmart charities and some of those, then they're saying, okay, we're going to zip code target, but we're going to zip code target in a reduced income area. So we're kind of getting to the poor. So yeah, it's a different way in. But I think as I talk to people around the country, I don't think there's one or two major ways of doing it. I think it varies tremendously.
Carrie, you have any follow-up thoughts on that?
In Connecticut, for the feral cats, it's reaching about, I think it's about 1,000 feral cats a year for the feral cat vouchers. For the low-income vouchers, unfortunately, it only allows 2 per household, and we all know that in the household there's usually more. So for Spay Connecticut, if somebody's coming in with the vouchers and we know that they have other animals in the house, then we can address that through Spay Connecticut. But it doesn't seem to be targeted by a zip code in Connecticut. It's more of the income. If they're receiving a state program, that's generally how they qualify.
When our low income voucher started, Kerry, the county government insisted that there would be no more than 8 animals, 4 of each species, per household. And it took us 2 years to figure out why they were saying that. And it was in the county code. And they said, oh yeah, here it is. It's right here in the county in code enforcement. They could have that many animals. And so we had to go through and get the law changed. We never got it above 8, but at least we figured out where it came from, because you're right, they have more than 2.
Do any of you know of any programs that are utilizing animal control officers to help with providing any animal clinic transport?
I'm trying to remember. There's a place in North Carolina that has the ACOs actually transporting animals, but I can't remember the name of it. That helps a whole bunch if you can pull it off and you have that kind of relationship. I think that's great. I mean, the thing about ACOs is a lot of times they're in the poor neighborhoods. If you can get them, and for a while in Hillsborough County, they would go to a complaint and then they would bring the application for the low cost vouchers right to the people that really needed it. So we thought that was a major victory.
It varies by town in Connecticut. Some ACOs do the same thing, Frank. They help fill out the voucher application for the individual people. And I actually have a couple of relationships where ACOs where they're trapping the feral cats, and I'll do the transportation for them because they're making that effort to trap the cats. So finding ways to work with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think they can be your friends because if they are not, heavy duty law enforcement, really want to help the community, you can go a long way because they extend your reach.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll probably be hearing a bit more about ACOs and some of the work that the Mass Animal Fund has been doing when we have Sherry Gustafson with us tomorrow. Someone else just mentioned too, some people use Uber and Lyft for transportation. I know of a person who actually traps cats in Jersey and uses them for transport. So, as long as there's compensation, there's somebody who's going to help do the transport, but obviously there's a funding issue there. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And this is a great closing presentation for tonight.